MZTV.
Someone commented on yesterday's video who was so distraught by the account by Brandon Caruthers of the woman who was burned alive in the car that it led him from one awful thing to another. The next awful thing was the young girls from that camp in Texas who were drowned in the flash flood over the 4th of July weekend. And it just caused this person commenting on yesterday's video to just tumble blindly into a groping to understand evil. And I am not blaming this individual at all. I don't know who this is. This person goes by the name of La Dolce Vita. Yeah, Italian for the good life. Well, let me tell you, there's not too much of that going on in Eon 3. But because of this comment, I am pressed. I'm going to read the comment. I'm going to read my response. And I'm going to read you a passage from Job because of this comment that was really off topic. But it does bring up the evil in the world, the presence of evil, and the sovereignty of God. And so I'm going to deal with it head on. I don't blame this individual for being distraught. The sovereignty of God, the fact that God does everything, is one of the hardest truths there is in the scripture. It's a fact, but it's very difficult. I teach the sovereignty of God because it is a scriptural topic. Ephesians 1:11, God is operating all in accord with the counsel of his will. It includes evil. Evil has no moral bias. It simply means to break. It is the opposite of built up. God never sins, but he certainly does effect evil upon the earth, and he does it for his own purposes. Again, evil simply means to break. There is no moral bias to it. Israel said concerning the land God brought them into, "Why have you brought us into this evil place?" They called the desert, the Sinai desert, evil. Did the Sinai desert sin? No, it did not. Evil, the word itself, ra, in the Hebrew, has no moral bias. God is in charge of it. God works it for his will. We don't have to like it. We often don't like it. I have said things to God that I would not repeat to you because I hate some of the things he does. Well, boo-hoo. Boo freaking hoo for me. Because God is God and he has a purpose in everything. And there's only, well, look, there's one thing worse. I say worse. I don't really mean to say that, but let me work through this. There's one thing worse than knowing that God is doing everything. I say worse because it's tough to swallow. And I'm going to get into what the alternative is. What's the alternative to God being sovereign? I'm going to tell you what the alternative is, and it's far worse. It's far more difficult. Let me put it that way. It's far more difficult to swallow than God being sovereign. This is Martin Zender. I'll try not to slobber as much today. Somebody pointed out yesterday that I was kind of slobbering at the microphone and they were quite distraught. And I said, sorry, maybe check out for 2 weeks and come back and maybe I'll be improved. But then again, I thought, well, I don't want to make anybody discuss it, so maybe I'll just wipe the side of my mouth when necessary. Again, because of the surgery that I had a month ago that I'm still recovering from. Thank you so much for your patience, most of you. There's one person not very patient about it. But anyway, in the end, I'll take it as instructive criticism and maybe I'll get a suction hose here or something to help me out. Better yet, an attractive assistant. For instance, my wife, Maria, can be here in a tight skirt with a suction hose. That wouldn't be bad, would it? Would that be bad? No. Okay, that would be good. All right. Now, let's go to the comments. And this has to do with Brandon Caruthers, the fireman, telling us about how he came across, he was on a call and came across a car engulfed in flames. They put the flames out, and inside was a victim. A woman was driving the car, was burned alive until she was dead. And he talked about how terrible that sight was. Of course, that led me to talk about the doctrine of eternal torment. I was making no comment about evil or the nature of evil or who was responsible for this event, but this person just gravitated toward that. And this is a thing of God, and I'm glad this person did that. And I don't blame this person for being confused or upset or challenging me on this topic. In fact, it's a right thing to do, and it's going to result in this show. For those of you who have never heard the truths that I'm going to lay out today, the truth and the truths, then this is going to be productive. I promise you it will be productive. La Dolce Vita says this. So let me get this straight. All that horror, and he's speaking of Brandon's email to me describing the woman who had been burned to death in her car. All that horror, and our all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, sovereign God sat with his arms folded and watched helplessly or carelessly and let that lady suffer and burn, and he did nothing to stop it? The sweet life, the good life, is upset by this, rightly so. I am too. But the writer here is incensed. I'm not sure if the writer is incensed at me or incensed at Brandon or incensed at God. Using my best analysis here from 40 years experience in this kind of thing, I would say this individual is upset at God. Join the club, sir. I've been upset at God many, many times. Let me continue. God sat with his arms folded and watched helplessly or carelessly and let that lady suffer and burn, and he did nothing to stop it, only to teach someone a lesson or get a point across. Let me stop there. Who said that the only reason this woman died in her car via fire was so that Brandon could send me an email and I could make a scriptural point concerning eternal torment? Okay, I've been quite kind to the writer until now. Only to teach someone a lesson or get a point across? So many things to unpack here. This is the first thing I want you to do, La Dolce Vita. The first thing I want you to do is concentrate on your own words. Our all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving, sovereign God. Stop right there. Do you believe any of those words that you just said? Are you being facetious? I'm not quite understanding. Listen, I know you're in pain and I know you're in agony. I interpret this entire post as someone who's reeling and who's suffering. I get it. I am so empathetic with you, sir or madam. I'm just going to call you a sir. I get the sense that the sir here. I don't know. I am sympathizing with you. I get it. I understand your pain. I feel your pain. I feel your frustration. So don't think I'm condemning you. Yes, God is all-powerful. Our God is all-knowing. Our God is all-loving, and our God is sovereign. Now, stick with that. That should solve your whole problem right there. No, it actually shouldn't, but it should keep you from saying, and he let that lady suffer and burn? Well, obviously. Oh, and he did nothing to stop it. Obviously, he did nothing to stop it. If he had done anything to stop it, it wouldn't have happened. Could he have stopped it? Of course. If you believe what you're saying here, that God is sovereign. Do you know what sovereign means? Do you know what's implied there? Do you know what that necessitates? It necessitates a God that is operating all things in accord with the counsel of his will, Ephesians 1:11. That's what that requires. requires God not to have let that happen, but to have caused it to happen. I have a verse for you on that. God does not let anything happen. He is the cause of all causes. And this is a difficult truth. This is a mature truth. This is meat and not milk. If you can't handle this, turn off the show. But I encourage you to stay with me because I have scripture. I don't know the reason why God did this. God is too high. His ways are too high. And he later says this, and don't be telling me that God's ways are higher than our ways. Why? That's the freaking answer. And don't tell me his ways are higher than ours. Why? Because that's the freaking answer. What? His ways are not higher than ours? He doesn't have a better perspective than we do? Don't tell me his ways are higher than ours. Or farther along, we'll all know about it. Yes, that's exactly what I am going to tell you. It sounds here like you don't believe God's ways are higher than ours. That's your answer. He has the long view, and I'm going to show you this with the cross of Christ. Besides, there's a scripture verse that says his ways are higher than ours. So why would you say, don't tell me? Don't sit there and tell me God's ways are higher than ours. What do you think? They're on par with ours? They're lesser than ours? Is that what you think? Jeez. Okay, I got a little frustrated there. But all that horror. Yeah, that's pure horror. I hate it. I can't hardly stand to think about it. I want to think that the woman died quickly and there was minimal suffering. And if she wasn't a believer, she's going to miss the tribulation. See, I'm trying to justify it in my puny way, but God is going to ultimately justify it, as he will everything. He will justify everything. How do I know that? Because he justified the worst evil that ever happened upon the earth, and that is the crucifixion of his son, Jesus Christ. The death of Christ on a Roman stake. That was the worst evil that ever happened. Worse than this. And worse than what follows. And this is the next thing you say. This is the next thing La Dolce Vita says. What about those innocent little girls sleeping on the Guadalupe River in Texas in a Christian camp? God sat on his hands and watched them drown in terror to teach their parents a lesson. First of all, the audacity that you think you know the only reason why that would happen, to teach their parents a lesson. It's too high for you. I don't know why he did it, but he did it. He wasn't sitting on his hands in either case. He was actively doing it. God is not a passive spectator in his own universe. He is actively running the universe. He does all things. So no, he was not sitting on his hands. But again, I ask you, do you actually believe he's all-powerful? I have my doubts. Do you actually believe he's all-knowing, all-loving, and especially sovereign? Do you know what that means? How would a sovereign God sit with his arms folded or sit on his hands? How could a sovereign God possibly do that if he's sovereign? You're a man in contradiction, and I don't blame you. This is difficult. But I'm solving all your problems today. This is your lucky day, sir. I'm speaking relatively, because you're going to discover the purpose of evil. You're going to discover it. I'm not saying you're going to like it, but I'm saying that you're going to find some comfort in it that you haven't had before. I hate this stuff. I hate it. I hate that there's no such thing as an innocent girl or an innocent person, by the way, but I hate that these girls died. I hate that young people die. I hate that old people die. I hate that Fetuses die. I hate death, period. I hate it, absolutely hate it. And I've publicly claimed to hate it for 33 years now. Does that stop me from believing that Christ Jesus has the keys of death and the unseen? No, it doesn't. I don't have to like it. I just have to believe it. At the same time, knowing that God's ways are higher than our ways. What about those innocent little girls sleeping on the Guadalupe in a Christian camp? God sat on his hands and watched them drown in terror to teach their parents a lesson or to chastise someone? I don't freaking know why. It's too high for me. But God is God. It's the only way you can look at this. Sensibly. Logically. Spiritually. Well, there's other ways you can look at it. Stupidly. Hypocritically. Sarcastically. Facetiously. Superficially. Immaturely. But I'm talking about looking at this spiritually and maturely, even while railing, even while crying, even while screaming at the deity, your dissatisfaction with the way he does things. Didn't Job do that? Oh yes, Job did that. Job complained bitterly when God afflicted him, but Job recognized that God afflicted him. His wife said, "Curse God and die." Job said, "Shall we accept good and not evil at the hand of God? Blessed be the name of the Lord. Shall we not accept good as well as evil?" Both good and evil come from the hand of God. Evil is not sin. It's a different Greek word. Different Greek word, different Hebrew word, different word altogether. Sin means to miss the mark. Evil means to break. God never misses the mark when he breaks shit, okay? If this is the outcome of sovereignty, and it's not, by the way, you're assuming it is, you've built your own little straw man and now you're attacking it. If this is the outcome of sovereignty, that is, just to teach somebody a lesson or just to give Brandon fodder for an email that could cause me to make a helpful show, it sure makes it hard to buy into. Yeah, that would make it hard for me to buy into also. We don't know why God killed that woman or those girls. We don't know why. But guess what I'm going to tell you now? God's ways are higher than our ways. I'm going to tell you something else that you don't want me to tell you. Farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, being in the next life, when we have the mind of Christ, it will all become clear. If this is the outcome of sovereignty, it sure makes it hard to buy into. Yeah, it would. But it's not the outcome of sovereignty. The outcome of sovereignty is the eternal happiness of all of God's creatures, including the woman in the car and the girls who drowned in the river, and the suffering of the parents who lost their children, or the children who lost their mother, or the husband who lost his wife. I hate all of this shit. Do you understand that? The sweet life in Italy. Do you understand that? I'm not giddy about God being sovereign, about God doing all things. This is where faith comes in, that God is higher and wiser than us, and he has a purpose in the end. Have you ever heard people say, La Dolce Vita? Have you ever heard anyone say, well, there's a reason for everything? You ever heard that one? You might have said it yourself. Have you ever said that yourself? Everything has a purpose. There's a reason for everything. That would only be possible if God is causing all of these things. I'll say it now. I was going to save it till later. I'm not going to get to my scriptures. I'll get to them tomorrow. The one thing would be harder than what I'm telling you today, that God is in control of his universe, is that everything is random. Or that Satan is in control, absolutely, of the universe. We know that Satan is the god of this eon, but absolutely God is the god of Satan. But what if Satan were the ultimate cause of these tragedies and every other tragedy that happens upon the earth? What if he was? How would you like that? Do you like apples? You do like apples? How would you like those apples? Or how would you like the fact that it's all random? Nobody's causing it. It's just random shit. How would you like that? What kind of comment would you write then? Because if everything's random, no one could possibly say there's a reason for everything. There would be a reason for nothing. Nothing would have a reason because nothing would have a cause. We're talking about causality. A random universe is a universe without cause. Nothing causes anything. That is nonsense. It is idiocy. It is foolishness. It is a lie. God is the cause of all causes. And I have a verse in Job for you. I was wanting to get to it. It's in Job 37:13. I'm going to have to get to it tomorrow, but I want to read a bunch of verses that lead up to it because it's just amazing, and it has to do with this Texas flood. Yes, it does. Job 37:13 says, whether it be for a club that he fulfills his approved plan or for benignity, it is he who causes it to occur. Causes it to occur. God causes everything to occur. He does not allow the flood in Texas. He did not allow that woman's car crash. He did not allow the crucifixion to happen to Jesus Christ. Here's the thing. The good life. The worst evil that's ever occurred is the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. No one's ever argued with me on that one. God's own son, nailed to a cross, innocent, came to save his people, and his own people put him on the pole. That's a worse evil than these girls dying in the flood, as terrible as that was, and as terrible as that woman's auto accident is that burned her body. The crucifixion of God's son was many, 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 many times worse and more evil. And nobody's argued with me yet when I dropped that proposition on them. People say, what about this evil, Martin? What about that evil? What about this flood? What about that hurricane? What about that tornado? What about that car accident? What about that war? And I say, what about the crucifixion of Christ? And they all shut up. And they all admit that was the worst evil that ever occurred on the face of the earth. And yet, what did the cross accomplish? What was the long view? What was God's goal in doing that? The eternal happiness of all his creatures and the eternal glory of his Son. To raise him 3 days later and to give him a glory greater than the glory he had before the world was, before the crucifixion. And to provide for the, again, as I say, to provide for the eternal happiness of his creatures. That's why he did it. And so what I just did for you was I justified the worst evil ever to occur upon this earth. I just justified it. Me, a guy sitting in a room in Fort Lauderdale at the end of Eon 3, who just had a new cheek built and got his head practically chopped off by a surgeon in Lima, Peru. Me, Martin Zender. I got that much figured out. That horrible evil was justified. God was right in doing it. And the Apostle Peter said that God purposed these things to occur. Said that in the book of Acts. Read the whole book of Acts, you'll find it. And what was it? It brought about the greatest good. Even for the victim. Even for the sufferer. But beyond that, for all of humanity and for the entire universe. Do you see what I just did for you? The gift that I gave you today, La Dolce Vita? I justified the worst evil that ever occurred. So do you not think that all lesser evils, and yes, this woman's car accident and this flood, they were both lesser evils than the crucifixion of Christ. Don't you think they will someday be justified? Don't you think they we will someday look back at those incidents and say, okay, we see why that had to happen. Don't you think that that woman herself will look back in the next life after she's raised and sees the glory? And don't you think she'll say, I see why that had to happen. I see why you did that now. And those girls, when they raise from the dead, I see why you did that now. Now that I see the outcome, now that I see the glory, and the glory will far, far, far eclipse the evil. And Paul says this in Romans chapter 8, verse 18. For I am reckoning that the sufferings of the current era, that's what we've been talking about, La Dolce. The sufferings of the current era do not deserve the glory about to be revealed for us. Don't deserve, cannot be compared to, are worthless, minuscule, nothing. Yes, the sufferings of the current era, all of them, are nothing, to be counted as nothing. They weigh nothing when compared to the glory about to be revealed. And that doesn't even speak, that's just the glory about to be revealed for us. This doesn't even speak of the glory to come. The future glory of God all in all, of the consummation of the eons. It doesn't even speak of that glory. It just speaks of the glory to be revealed for us. But even that, even the beginnings of the glory of God, will far outweigh the sufferings of the current era, whether ours or the suffering of others. But we suffer, and I'm with you. I suffer with others. Their suffering is my suffering. I can't be happy. I can't be happy when these people are suffering. Can't. Part of my problem, part of my depression issue. Take a whole team of psychologists to figure me out. Let me tell you something, La Dolce Vita. I'll just read you my answer and then I'll stop, but I want to go to some verses. Tomorrow, we're going to go to Job. There's a guy who suffered, and there's an amazing passage in Job that almost describes, like a forecast, the Texas flood. God didn't sit on his hands and watch those children drown in terror. He is the cause of all causes. The sovereignty of God is a difficult truth. You are judging only by what you see because you do not know the outcome of these things. Something that was much, much worse than these young ones drowning in a river was the Son of God being crucified on a Roman stake, and yet that act was justified in that it produces the salvation of the universe. You cannot see what will eventually come of all of Earth's tragedies, and so you are judging shallowly. Not saying I blame you. I fall into it at times myself, but the only more difficult teaching than swallowing the truth of the sovereignty of God would be that these are random events that have no meaning. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, but you won't be able to because it's such a terrible and impossible thought. Is Satan in control? Is everything random? These are your alternatives. I hope I'm not coming across as scolding because I feel your pain. Like you, I hate what God does at times. But all will be justified in the end. If the cross is justified, and it is, then all lesser evils will be justified. We take this to be the truth by faith. I pray, La Dolce Vita, and everyone else watching, that God causes your faith to grow.